I'm going to give you a little flavor of our business model and then try to drill down into some specifics about how we, in order to execute that business model, how we design the culture, the supply chain, et cetera, of our business. I'll start by giving just a little bit of background on Method. Method was founded by myself and that guy standing up in this photograph, Eric Ryan. We come from two very different philosophies. As you heard from my bio, I come from an incredibly dorky background as a climate scientist. You'll see about that on the next slide. And Eric comes from a branding and advertising background. He's one of the most brilliant brand marketers I've ever met. He really understands the soul of brands and what that means to consumers and how to build brand experiences that are compelling to consumers. And he and I were roommates in this flat that you see in the background here with a bunch of my buddies from Stanford, and it was a typical bachelor pad, mid-20s bachelor pad, not the place you would expect a cleaning product company to be born, for sure. But it was where we started talking about some of the common interests that we had. As I mentioned, this is the cheesiest and easiest way I can explain what I did before I started Method. I made the charts that Al Gore used in his movie at the Carnegie Institution. And while I was really interested in the science we were doing there at Carnegie, there were two realizations I had. One was that I was preaching to the converted. This was the mid to late 90s. I worked on Kyoto and things like that. Excuse me. And I got this feeling that I was only talking to other concerned scientists. And then secondly, as a green consumer at the time, every brand that I patronized asked me to make a sacrifice. The core proposition was, the earth is dying, you need to save it, so buy this inferior product that's brown, doesn't work, smells bad, it costs too much, because the earth is dying and you need to save it. And I couldn't think of any brands that were actually based on a consumer proposition of sacrifice. And that's where Eric and I started to come together to form the nucleus of this idea called Method. And the reason we started looking at the cleaning category is because it was so closely aligned in all of its brand character, and it was so toxic. We noticed ultimately, as we dug into it, a few common themes that could form the center of a business idea, and they were that people were getting more involved in their homes, firstly. Americans, which is where we started, were starting to pursue more healthy lifestyles, but they were still cleaning with these products that in some cases were poisonous. And then, of course, we were starting to see the roots of the green movement, but still very, as I mentioned, very focused around the idea of sacrifice. And so the initial idea was, how do you make this green conversation relevant? And the irony here is that it's a little bit like a Trojan horse strategy. You have to make it selfish first. You have to make it about the person, the individual, and what she cares about. And that, when it comes to health and environment, is really about health before it is about environment. And even before either of the two of those things, it's a lot more about how this product works and how it functions in her home. And those are things that we very much put to the fore in the product design process here at Method. We started the business very meagerly. We actually made the first products in that flat that I showed you. This is a picture of our first sale on February 28th, 2001. I bought that invoice book at a office supply store on the way down. The way we initially sold the product was to walk into grocery stores at 6 o'clock in the morning and corner store managers and start pitching them on why they needed to put their products in our store. It was a pretty rookie way to start, but it allowed us to learn an incredible amount from the beginning. This is the initial product that we put on shelf, as I mentioned, filled in that flat that I showed you a picture of. All the labels are hand applied. The models on the labels, one is Eric's girlfriend, the other one is me. And skipping a few chapters ahead and winding the tape forward, from those meager beginnings, we've been able to achieve some decent level of growth and success. So in 2006, we were number 7 on the Inc. 500, the 7th fastest privately held company in America, fastest growing privately held company in America. We're actually the fastest growing company in the state of California, and we make soap, which is fairly remarkable. And then just in 2008, we were named by Fast Company the 16th most innovative company in the world. And central to this idea is design. And I want to spend the rest of the presentation talking about design. It was mentioned earlier that it is true, I believe, that design is the most confusing word in the English language, and I am going to attempt to define it. Because I think that the cradle-to-cradle philosophy is very core to the idea of what design really is. Most people, when they talk about method, and those of you who know our brand, when you think about design and you think about method, this is mostly what people think about. They think about beautiful forms, vibrant colors. And while this is a critical component of design, it is not design in and of itself. Design is much broader than that. And I think that that's becoming clearer and clearer in the 21st century. Take, for example, Apple Computer. Apple is, I would say, the most lauded example of great design ever. Yet I often feel this way about my Macintosh. I'm presenting to you from a MacBook Pro. I've got an iPhone in my pocket. I often wish that it came in green. And this is from a campaign by Greenpeace a few years back, and Apple has taken a lot of heat in the recent past for some of their green practices. And what this is showing is that while Apple is beautiful and functional in the present tense, in the way that the product functions and looks, in the way that you use it, it's not exactly considered as much as it should be across the past, what the materials are made from, and the future, where these materials will go when they're finished. To just give you one statistic on that matter, there are 50 million tons of e-waste created every year in America. That is worldwide, excuse me. And that is the equivalent of 100,000 fully loaded 747s. That's all computers and cell phones that are thrown away with toxic materials in them. Contrast that example with something as mundane as the carpet in Method's offices. This is a product that's made from only two materials, both of which are non-toxic. It's beautiful and functional in its present form as a carpet that we walk on in our offices, but because it's made from recycled materials and because it can be taken apart and fed back into the recycling or into the manufacturing process to make new carpet when we're done with it, it's carpet that has both a past and a future. And I would posit that this is really the direction that design is headed in the 21st century. It's not just beautiful and functional in the present tense, but it's beautiful and functional across the past, the present, and the future. In other words, design is bigger than design. It's broader than design. I'm now going to take you briefly into how do we put this to work at Method at the very base layer. So we're going to zoom into a couple of design principles at Method. The first one is essentially the precautionary principle. The fundamental tenet of toxicology is this equation, that the safety of using the material or a chemical or the risk is a function of how hazardous it is times how much you're exposed to, a fairly simple concept. And most companies in our space, and most companies, period, focus on safety. If you've ever heard the expression safe if used as directed, that just means that it's made out of hazardous chemicals and don't expose yourself to too many of them. If you don't expose yourself to too many of them, then it's quote-unquote safe. It doesn't take a mathematical genius to figure out if you focus on hazard in this equation and make it zero or very low, then you're not going to have any safety problems or risk problems. And that's essentially what we do at Method, and that creates two lists. It creates a positive list of materials that meet this screen. Actually, Bill McDonough and Michael Brongard, his business partner, actually do these materials assessments for Method, and they do one on every single material, packaging, fragrance, ingredient, and otherwise that we use at Method. And those positive and negative lists then become our toolbox, or the positive list becomes the toolbox from which we design product. The second design principle we have here at Method we call reincarnation, and it really is this idea of considering the past, present, and future at the very beginning of the design process. And you'll look at these endpoints, and a lot of those that are familiar with these will say this looks a lot like a life cycle assessment. You'd be right in that. But what's really important about this is we've democratized this language so that when I walk around the offices of Method and we're talking about a package, for example, I can talk about whether to a designer, to a graphic designer, a creative, about whether this bottle has a past and a future. And they may not know the ins and outs of life cycle assessment, but they can tell me whether that material used to live as a plant or used to be a bottle before it was a bottle, and where it can, and we can talk about where it will go after we're done with it. The third principle, and there are more than three, but I just wanted to share a couple here, is transparency. This is an example off of our website of the ingredient listing for laundry detergent that I'll talk about in a second. It's a revolutionary new product, and the first thing that we did was publish all of its ingredients. We also do real-time sustainability reporting online. This is where you go into issues about corporate governance and how we pay living wages and our responsibility, our social practices as a business. You can go to bcorporation.net and see in real time our sustainability reporting, completely transparent. You can comment on it. And applying these principles of transparency, reincarnation, and precaution to the product has allowed us to do some interesting stuff. But I think what's really interesting about it is what it means for what gets designed and who the designer is. This picture here is an example of a body wash product. These bottles are made 100% from post-consumer PET, so there's no virgin plastic in these bottles at all. And in fact, at Method, we're very close now to not using any virgin plastic across our entire business, which is we're well out in front of other businesses when it comes to that. But the interesting thing here is, how did we make this happen? This is actually a photograph of, I'm in this photograph with a quality guy, a procurement guy, and an environmental chemist. And we're standing in front of a resin silo. So this is a big container, like a grain silo, that sits up on its end, that we installed in a factory in Kentucky that segregates our post-consumer specialized resin that we had to make in order to keep these bottles clear and high quality and vibrant in the aesthetic form that Method needs. We had to design not just this resin, but the entire process from front end to back end, including segregating the resin, to be able to deliver both the style and the substance that the Method brand is all about. And I think what's interesting here is, in order to create this innovation, you have 4 people in this photograph, none of which would ever get the label of designer in today's current parlance, but I would say are very much critical to the design process. And it's not just these 4, it's everyone at Method thinking in this way, using these cradle-to-cradle design principles in order to create innovations like this. In other words, if you want to create design this way, then everyone has to be in the game. Everything must get designed, and everyone must become a designer. I'll give another quick example, and that is the wipes category. So if you think about cleaning wipes or baby wipes, if you just take the cleaning wipes segment just in the United States alone, there are 165 million pounds of cleaning wipes thrown in landfills every year. And cleaning wipes, even though they're soft and fuzzy, they're made out of plastic, usually polypropylene. And that's a tremendous footprint. This was something that we realized early on at Method, and in 2003 we developed this product, which was the first biodegradable, compostable biodegradable wipe product in the mass market. And it was done using those design principles that I just mentioned. The impact of this product or being designed in this way was recently brought home to me when I was walking down this beach, which is on the west side of the state of Michigan. And I was there for a business meeting, and I had some extra time. I was just taking a walk on the beach, and I came across this. And I picked it up, and by the pattern on this wipe, I recognized that this was actually a Method wipe. And if you look closely and you kind of know what you're looking for, you can tell that this wipe is in its first stages of biodegradation. And if this wipe, if I had not come across this wipe and I would have just left it there, in another roughly 28 days, this product would have essentially just biodegraded into the sand that's around it in a non-toxic way. And for me, that really brought home, and anytime you make a physical good, no matter how responsible you want it to be, you end up seeing it in the environment. You know, we've all seen a candy wrapper blowing around on the street corner. And it's a real moment of truth when you see that thing and you see it doing what it was designed to do using those design principles that I mentioned. What's really interesting, and this is where I want to talk next, is that it has created a bit of a movement where, because of the success that Methods had in the marketplace and the design principles that we're using to design product responsibly, it started to become a lightning rod for other brands to start to follow it. We have seen in this case here, about 6 years after we launched our white product, the Clorox business launched under their Greenworks brand, along with a whole bunch of marketing, which you can see here, in natural and biodegradable claims, a cleaning wipe that was made from a biodegradable substrate. So often the impact that a business creates can be larger than just the impact of its products by forcing other competitors to follow it. In other words, design reverberates. So I want to dive into this idea of creating change bigger than one's own business just for a second, and because I think it really highlights the differences in Methods' business model. I believe that businesses should behave more like organisms than organizations. And I want to show you what I mean. Business, as the largest and most powerful institution on the planet, I believe, has not only the opportunity but the onus to create positive social and environmental change. But it's not business as we know it today. It's business profoundly and fundamentally different. I would call it business redesigned. Today, there are a number of factors that impede business's progress. If you think about the types of businesses that dominate our economy, you think about their scale and their nimbleness. These are not businesses that welcome change. They're market leaders, and inherent in that dominant position is a desire to maintain it. And if you look at the strategy of most of, for example, big CPG or FMCG, depending on where you are in the world, competitors of mine, the model is to build intellectual property, hold market static, and extract value for as long as possible before you need to change. The model is built static. In other words, business has the opportunity, but business has a bias against progress. This model breeds a bias against progress. And the hard truth, the brutal reality, is that a business that's truly committed to being the business of the future has to be truly committed to change. And it must be willing to completely abandon what makes it money today and replace it with something that's better, something greener, but a lot less certain. And that is something that runs afoul of even the most liberal of shareholder protections. Said another way, we need a new model for business, one that can make the transition from just being efficient or doing less harm to effectiveness and produce things that don't simply get the job done, but don't simply get the job done with less collateral damage, but are abundant and beautiful and restorative and truly sustainable. And because the sustainability imperative is predicated on progress, that which we do today is not sustainable. To achieve it, we have to get better fast. And so the business that's truly committed to sustainability then is truly committed to progress and change. It has to adapt. It has to grow. And this is the business model of the future that I'd like to demonstrate. And it's what I'm putting into practice right now with Method. And it provides a critical linkage between today's reality and the restorative, cooperative business model that we can also easily envision, but we're so ill-equipped to bring to reality. So in order to study this business model of the future, we have to understand how change occurs. And this is, of course, a topic that's been written at great length about, and I won't repeat that stuff. I'll just give you an anecdote about how change occurs and how we're applying it in method. Excuse me. And this is where we'll come back to Bill McDonough. I had the pleasure of accompanying Bill to Iceland. This is the flag of Iceland in 2007 on a retreat that he does where 20 people go off to Iceland and they talk about how to re-envision the future of the way we make things. And while we were there, we had dinner with the president of Iceland. And Iceland has a very interesting story in that they've completely flip-flopped their energy economy in a very short period of time. In the late 70s, they were 90% dependent on foreign imports of coal for their energy needs. And today they get 100% of their electricity and 80% of the entire electricity needs for the entire country from a sustainable supply of renewable energy, most of which is geothermal. And that's pretty remarkable even for a small country to make that flip-flop in just 20 years or 25 years. And so I asked the president of Iceland, I said, did you just decree that it would be so, or how did this occur? And what he said was really interesting, and I guess didn't surprise me. He said that what happened is Iceland looks like this. It's very sparsely populated, and you have these just little hamlets that are separated by a couple of miles across a barren valley from another. And he said that small, enterprising individuals would make use of the resources that they had hyper-locally. And then maybe a year would go by, and eventually they'd walk across the valley to their other neighbor, and then they'd figure out a way to consolidate a little bit. And slowly but surely, neighbors would consolidate in small ways until a critical mass was achieved, a tipping point was achieved. And now you drive around Iceland, and this is what you see, which is large geothermal plants that provide all of this renewable energy for the country and are now attracting energy-intensive businesses to the country where they can take advantage of this abundant supply. What I think is really interesting about this is that it parallels exactly the way that human species of all species evolve, and it's a model that can be applied to business. Here's what I mean. So when Darwin studied evolution, he came up with a theory called phyletic gradualism, and it's represented by this sort of meandering lines in two directions here on this slide. He said that over time, species just kind of slowly and gradually speciate or evolve. In 1972, two scientists named Gould and Eldridge came along, and they proved, studying fossil records, that Darwin was right about the slow part, and he was wrong about the gradual part. And in actuality, what happens is this graph on the right, known as the punctuated equilibrium model, where not much happens. Things are static, and then there's a stress on the system. There's an environmental stress or a food shortage or whatever, and then species evolve very rapidly over a short period of time to a new equilibrium, and then they just kind of stay put until the next stress comes. What's interesting about this is if you flip the axes and just put time on the x-axis, what you get is a step function where you have these periods of rapid change that are caused by catalysts that are interspersed with stable environments. And I think this is exactly how a business can create change bigger than itself. I'll give you an example. In 2004, Method started looking at the laundry category, and we realized that laundry was a category that was incredibly messy, incredibly wasteful, and consumers didn't really like it. Laundry detergent at the time was 80% water and packaged in giant jugs, and I am giving a primarily North American context right now, but it is true worldwide as well. And the amount of water and plastic and fuel and resources that were used to basically ship water around was truly shocking. And so we set out on our design exercise, and we came up with the first triple concentrated laundry detergent in the United States. And we launched this nationally with our customers, beginning with Target and our grocery customers and some of our specialty channel customers. You can see the set here in August of 2004. A couple of months later, we did a test market with Walmart. Call this my Where's Waldo photograph. If you look on the second shelf from the bottom, you can see our single facing of the Method laundry detergent. And you can see right above us some of those giant jugs that are so large, in fact, they have to have handles and a tap in order to dangle them off a table to use them. And what was interesting about this is we started talking about the resource savings and the shelf space savings that customers could have by moving to this format. To give you one example, Target spends $1 million a year shipping laundry detergents to their own stores. And that is exacerbated by the largeness and sort of wastefulness of laundry detergent. So we launched this nationally, and some of our customers started to kind of catch on to this idea. And so did some of our competitors. In late 2005, about 16 months later, All, which is a Unilever brand, launched Small and Mighty, a triple concentrate with an explicitly green message, with some very similar copy on the package and very similar imagery. Some very interesting advertising. The advertisement on the left we ran in August of 2004. The one on the right ran about 16 months later after that. And keep in mind that quote from the Unilever employee at the bottom, looking to method as a guiding light in the concentrate world, for a few slides from now. After All, Small, and Mighty launched, they launched big with Walmart. Walmart started to really get behind this idea. They started to talk to other detergent manufacturers who fought the idea, to be honest with you, and where the category ended was with a 2X concentrate, not a 3X. In May of 2007, so this is 3 years after Method has launched, P&G was now into the 2X concentrated form, and Helena Minsk from Unilever was delighted that everybody had decided to follow their lead on laundry detergent. And shortly after that, Walmart announced that by May of 2008 that they would only sell compacted laundry detergents, which would save 400 million gallons of water, 95 million pounds of plastic, 125 million pounds of cardboard, and a whole bunch of fuel. Those numbers are very, very similar to the numbers that we had in our presentation originally to the customers that we launched our triple concentrated laundry detergent with. What I think is interesting about this point with Walmart is Walmart essentially forced in the United States the entire laundry category to go to a compacted format, essentially to a new equilibrium where a very stodgy category that had not changed in 50 years. If you think about it, we do our laundry exactly the same way that our grandparents did. And aside from the advent of liquid, there really hadn't been much innovation at all. And I think it's because businesses didn't want it to change. That industry is dominated by large players. But by taking a true innovation that aligns the consumer's interest for lighter, easier, smarter, with the interest of the environment and the social condition, you can create a new equilibrium in a category and make a very stodgy category change with an enormous environmental benefit in a very short period of time, in this case about 3 years. And the great thing about this is that you can then do it again. When you create one equilibrium, when you're the catalyst that creates a new equilibrium, then it gives you license to innovate again to create another catalytic event. And that is exactly what we've done. So we have now introduced a product that is an 8X concentrate. This is a product that can't be achieved the way that normal laundry detergents are designed. I don't have time to go into it, but essentially this product has less than 0.5% of water in it and has a patent on how to essentially do laundry detergent, keep it liquid without water. And what it represents is the giant orange jug is now shrunk down to a package that's smaller than the size of a soda can. And it allows us to put a pump on this product so that you never have to pour laundry detergent again. It's essentially the first one-handed laundry detergent in the world, and again is a step change in terms of the resource savings that are involved in getting a load of laundry detergent done. This is some of the statistics. We won't go into any detail here. The point I want to make with this slide is that this innovation is actually still, in cradle-to-cradle terms, still eco-efficient. It's not quite eco-effective. But what this business model shows you is that in a series of steps, by innovating and bringing the consumer along with us, we can, in a series of steps, actually achieve a truly eco-efficient or eco-effective solution through a series of eco-efficient steps. And if you think about, if you visualize, what does a truly sustainable laundry detergent look like? It is not a laundry detergent liquid that you sell more and more of. It's probably a laundry detergent that's integrated into a machine that is used over and over again. And the technology exists for that. And Method's business model is built such that we will, like we did with 8X when we cannibalized our 3X business in order to go 8X to launch that thing that's greener, that's better, that's far less certain, we can do that again and again and change from a product of consumption, like laundry detergent, to a product of service, like something where Method would get paid a few cents on every load somebody did, where they've designed the laundry detergent to work inside and with the laundry machine, which is something, in fact, that we're doing with some of our business partners. So again, design creates change, and it's by aligning the interests of society, environment, and business. If you can do that I believe is the ultimate business design challenge. And if you can do it, you can actually create an organization that behaves a little bit more like an organism. It evolves. It has the ability to change itself, metamorphosize over and over again, and achieve a truly sustainable future by using one innovation to create license for the next. Since we're coming towards the end of the time that I wanted to talk here, I am going to show a few more things, but I'm going to move relatively quickly through the next couple of steps. I just wanted to quickly mention the innovation also allows us to really challenge the norms of the category. You can kind of see it with this advertising campaign that we talked about, where we used the jug laundry detergent as the villain. I believe the laundry jug is the SUV of the consumer products world. We based it around a campaign in the States that was run about a drug-free America. So you can see jug-free, say no to jugs. Are you a jug addict? And doing all of this and applying these design concepts to our product, I also want to talk a little bit about how we apply them to our business, both culturally and from a supply chain standpoint, very briefly. One of the things that we recognized several years ago is that one of the biggest areas of our footprint is shipping our product to our customers. And so we partnered with J.B. Hunt, which is the largest trucker in the United States, because we don't have the resources to operate our own truck fleet. And we together with them, we visualized the future of sustainable transport, and we developed a series of biodiesel trucks that run off of waste vegetable oil biodiesel, secondary biodiesel. This is a picture of that truck. This is another picture of that truck. The really interesting thing about these trucks is that they're the most efficient trucks that we operate. With a combination of the biodiesel and some of the efficiency measures on these trucks, it gets about 15% better mileage and 30 to 50% reduction in the carbon footprint of the transport, and which essentially means that in addition to just being the greenest trucks we operate, they're the cheapest trucks we operate, which has allowed us to now extend this to the point that we run a third of all of our product volume using exclusively these trucks in the United States, and we have a huge incentive to, and we will very shortly be rolling that out to the rest of our distribution chain. So one small innovation done right can lead to a new equilibrium, again, in the supply chain. And we're doing a lot of other stuff with solar and water-free manufacturing, all of which is based around the same principle. This design ethos, we talk about design not being a department, but being a culture. It's reflected in the offices in San Francisco, Chicago, and London. This is a picture of the office in San Francisco. I'm actually sitting in the room on the left right now. We believe that communication is a strategic asset for Method. It's a strategic advantage. This is a picture of our setup. There are no offices at Method. The CEO, me, my co-founder, we all sit right in this open space along with everybody so that we can quickly collaborate. This is a picture of Sarah. She's our consumer response person. Instead of sitting in a cubicle somewhere, she is sitting in our offices in San Francisco She often sits in a beanbag chair on our new product development floor and just shouts out questions that she has to our chemists so that she can respond in real time to people that email and call her with questions about method. We put everything on the walls. This is a picture of our wiki wall. So every idea, concept, thought, raw material idea that we've got is put up on the wall so everyone can see these things, pick them up, touch them, feel and collaborate and share ideas. We curate examples from across the world that we think are interesting, in this case packaging, in this case just pictures that people have taken on safaris that they've been on to places to check out cool ideas. And we create forums to share. So every Monday morning we get the entire company together in all of our offices, and we share thoughts, ideas, things that are working, innovations that we've seen in the marketplace. And it has a great way of kicking off the week in a way that gets people thinking about how to collaborate with one another. And second, the second part of that of being able to collaborate is really being able to prototype in real time. This is our very high-tech photo studio, but it allows us to prototype marketing communications in real time. We have a shelf set in this office where we can do shelf sets and collaborate with customers on what those planograms would look like. We're constantly testing new products in our own kitchens with our own people to get a gut check on things first. This is all part of the iterative process that's so key to design thinking. We have 3D printers and modelers that can model bottles, and then we can quickly make what you see here, which is a prototype bottle mold so that we can make real bottles that you can touch and feel. We have a lab in this office in downtown San Francisco so that we can make the chemistry parts of the product. And all of that is based around the idea of designing for and by People Against Dirty, which is something that you will see on every method package. We call ourselves People Against Dirty. It is our mission. And you'll see that everything we do revolves around this idea of including People Against Dirty in our pursuit of a more sustainable future. And it's something that's it's based around our values of our business. I won't go into detail on these, but I'll give you a flavor of two of them. One of them is what would MacGyver do, and the other one is keep it weird, which is about participating in the culture of this place. And what all of this does, is this ethos, is it really it creates advocates, not consumers. And this is something that's really unique to our business relative to any other FMCG or CPG business. When you have letters like this one, which are effusive and using superlatives about a product that you have not yet launched, this was a letter that came back from somebody who had tested one of our products, then you know you've got a great connection with consumers. And it is truly rare. We have 20,000 people that have signed up to be advocates for the Method brand and spread the word about our products. We have people that get excited about some of our new products and send us in photographs. And we even, as you can see here, we even have Dogs Against Dirty down on the bottom there. We have people that turn our products into artwork like you can see in the upper right. And when you think about the fact that this is a business that creates bathroom cleaner, I think it's truly remarkable. What it does is it really kind of blurs that line between who we are and who we serve, between the People Against Dirty that happen to be on Method's payroll and the People Against Dirty that just love our business and our brand and use our products. To close, what I wanted to talk about just briefly is that in order to create design that creates change and has this reverberation effect, you have to build it into the core of the business. And what that means for the designer, and everyone must become a designer, is that instead of the designer's domain just being product as it normally has been, the designer has to think about that product in the context of a company and a group of people that are involved in that design process. And then she has to think about that company sitting within the context of customers and competitors and a category out there in which they compete. And of course, that category sits within a culture. of people's ideas and values. And it's only when the designer is thinking on this very broadest level and is able to bring those things down to core design principles inside the business that she can design product that truly creates change. And with that, I think let's just wrap, and I would love to move to the Q&A section.
Excellent, Adam. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It does a wonderful job of illustrating how these philosophies can change a company, change an industry, help change the world, and drive a lot of wonderful excitement about the movement. There have been a bunch of questions coming in. A few of them are bundled around how to get started. So here we are as YGLs, a lot of passionate young people that work in established companies. So any advice for how to get this sort of movement, this culture you talked about, getting design, people thinking about design from past, present, future, how to push that into an established company, and where some of the landmines are and points of resistance typically pop up, and how to get over those?
Yeah, if you study the theory of design thinking, and this is something that IDEO and other design gurus have written a lot about, you learn that the idea of prototyping and iterating is incredibly important, and I believe that. And just like the way we started Method, I didn't talk in great detail about it, but I mean, I started it in my apartment with Eric. We made the first batches in our sink. We had no sales force. We literally walked into grocery stores and cornered store managers, which is a really good way to get kicked out of a grocery store. But what it does is, by focusing small and focusing on a tiny success story and making one store, in this case, a success, and working hard on that, using that as a prototype for how you go bigger, and then learning from it, adjusting your approach and redesigning your approach so that you can then apply it to a slightly bigger task. I'm a big believer in that. I think you actually reach bigger, more tangible results faster by starting smaller and rapidly iterating in a loop, so that you're good at failing and learning quickly. And I think that can be applied regardless of whether you're starting a business where it's easy to start small because you kind of have to, or whether you're, what people call now an intrapreneur. You're a person who's trying to create this within a large established company. I think a lot of times what happens in those large established companies is they bring in luminaries. They'll bring in a Bill McDonough and they'll talk to the company and everybody gets inspired, but then they have no idea about how to actually make this change within their company. And I think while that stuff is important, you need to follow it up with building things from the bottom up. It's with one person. It starts with 3 people maybe. Figuring out a way to create a prototype of a new way of thinking, isolated from and protected from those kind of natural antibodies that are sometimes in a business, so that it can flourish, create something that's unique, and then you can build from it. The last thing I'll say on that question is make sure it's tangible. The idea of the biodiesel truck was one of the greatest things about that program. We started with one truck, but the greatest thing about it, it was a 53-foot semi that I could pull up in front of my office in San Francisco and I could honk the horn. And that sort of tangibility created an enormous desire to want to expand that program. So, keep it practical.
Wonderful, wonderful. It shows you the power of communication and illustration in sending a message. The related is, could you talk about the push-pull about in change, where how much of it comes from a company, how much of a drive to innovate comes from external pressures from consumers or even NGOs, and where does government fit in for pushing this change? And related to that is pushing these sort of initiatives. Does it affect margin, and can you price up for these sort of better products?
Yeah. So let me try to take that chunk by chunk, and if I miss anything, David, kind of remind me of what I've missed. So why don't I start on the margin piece first? I don't think that you can get margin for green. You certainly can't in my category. There are green cleaning products that are being made by Walmart, for example, as private label. So you can't charge more for the green attribute. What you can charge more for is a better product. And I often talk about, I say that, Method has been recognized as a cradle-to-cradle company, meaning everything that we do is according to those standards. And we now have 60 products that are cradle-to-cradle certified, which puts us in I think the top 3 of companies out there of number of products. But I often say that cradle-to-cradle or sustainability is just an aspect of the product's quality at Method in the way we do business, and nothing more. And I think that's really important, because I think people get mixed up and they come up with green brand propositions, and they say, hey, we're the green alternative to whatever. We're a green car, we're a green computer, we're a green cleaning product. And I don't think that you can charge a premium for that, because we're moving to a world where green is commoditizing, and that's a good thing. Green is going to become an attribute across every product. And so you're not going to be able to charge up for it. It's going to be expected. But what you can do is you can charge up for a product that's just plain better. And like the laundry detergent I showed to you, it is by far the world's greenest, most sustainable laundry detergent, bar none, we believe. And from a data standpoint, I can prove it. But the most powerful thing about that laundry detergent is, instead of a big, heavy, wasteful, messy process that everybody hates, it's a simple, easy, one-handed squirt. It's just a better product. And that's what allows us to charge up a little bit more. And if you're going to be the best product out there, then you sure as heck better be the most sustainable. So it's a nuance, but I think it's an important one to highlight. Now, in terms of innovation and the role of business and government, as I mentioned before, I don't believe that business – well, let me say this. I think that politicians follow business, not the other way around. And I think that's obvious when you follow the money in politics. And since big businesses will talk a lot about innovation, but they have a huge disincentive against radical innovation. They'll do a lot of incremental innovation, and that is important, but it's just incrementalism. It's a little new innovation so that they can lock the market into a static place and extract value. Whereas for Method, we have to radically innovate to compete. And the way I believe we create change in the role of government here is it may be a little bit pessimistic, but I just think we need more businesses like Method and a handful of others that are doing things according to this adaptive organism-style model. And as we get bigger, we will supplant the interests of big business, and I think sort of government falls in line. Now, that may be a little bit pessimistic, but the work that I've done in the public sector has shown me that it's really hard to fight the forces of entrenched special interests, and the best thing you can do is just prove a model that's better in a different direction. In other words, I think the policy will follow once we show that this is a better way to do business.
And then last question, as we're running out of time. But again, before I ask, just thank you again for sharing so much with us today. And for everyone else within the YGL community, this webinar is going to be available for people to see and share with other YGLs at a future time. And that communication will come from Eric later on. So the last question is, as you grow, as Method grows, how do you keep in, you shared with us some of the feelings, the culture of innovation, of communication. How do you keep that spirit alive as Method grows?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and probably one of the most important questions in our business. There's a number of strategies that we have. Probably the most effective one, I mentioned briefly the values of Method. There are 5 of them. They are care, innovation, collaboration, what would MacGyver do, and keep it weird. The first three are relatively standard, but we have our ways of defining behaviors that support care, innovation, and collaboration. What MacGyver is about is really about resourcefulness. It's how would you do with less to solve really big, hairy problems, which is something that as a challenger brand in an industry of giants, we just simply must do. And the last question, keep it weird, is manifests itself in a homework assignment that every method employee goes through. So in our recruiting process, it's a very extensive process that has a lot of steps to it and a lot of different people, 3 different phases. You'll probably interview with 15 different people, and if you get far enough in the process, you're asked to do a homework assignment. And the homework assignment is something where you'll come in, you will present to these 15 people that have interviewed to you, stand up in front of the room and present the answer to 3 questions, one of which is a strategic question about the job you'd be doing. The second is a tactical question, kind of drilling down a little bit more about the job you'd be doing. And the third question is always simply, how would you keep method weird? And what it does, and you're given no other information than that, but really the question is about how would you participate in the culture of this place. We have a philosophy at Method, and on those value cards that I briefly showed in the slide, on those value cards it says, go ahead, copy our products, copy our fragrances, copy our formulas, copy our design, copy our copy, but you'll never copy our culture. And that is built around the idea that culture and the way we work is our only truly sustainable competitive advantage, because any product attribute can be copied and can be copied quickly. But if we're the best at continually innovating and rapidly creating that new next equilibrium in the categories in which we compete and aligning consumer interests with environmental and social interests, then we're going to continually stay ahead. So that question in the recruiting process about keeping Method weird is about how would you participate in the culture of this place? How would you collaborate and innovate with others? How would you demonstrate care, and how would you MacGyver along with everyone else here? And it has an enormous effect, a brilliant effect of still maintaining a great diversity of thought and different types of people. I mean, we've got everybody from creatives to operational, supply chain planners here in this office. So we have a great diversity of thought, but all people that aren't, we don't have any people that are just going to sit in a cube and hide behind their email inbox and do things like that. They're all people that are going to roll their sleeves up and participate in the culture of this place. And I think that is one of the most important ways that we continually orient and reinforce the culture as we get bigger.
Excellent. Well, Adam, again, this was absolutely fantastic. I'm sure this is going to be much talked about in time to come. And I couldn't think, again, of a better company to illustrate how these philosophies, these principles can change not only a company but an industry. Thank you so much for participating today, and look forward more to come and trying to get you more involved in the West community.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It was a real pleasure.